Why is it that some people seem completely untouched by chaos, while others fall apart at the slightest disruption? You've seen them. The kind of people who walk through storms without flinching. Their world crumbles, plans unravel, insults are hurled, yet they remain still, calm, grounded, unmoved. And you wonder, what do they know that I don't? It's not luck. It's not ignorance. It's something else, something deeper. Most of us aren't like that. We grow up learning to react. Someone cuts us off in traffic, we rage. A friend forgets to text back, we spiral. Life doesn't go as planned. We feel punished as if the universe is somehow conspiring against us. We spend years building a self that is completely dependent on everything outside of us, approval, validation, order, control. But eventually life tests us. Something breaks. A betrayal, a failure, a moment that pierces straight through our emotional armor. And in that silence, we realize we've been living as puppets pulled by strings we never saw. That's where this journey begins. Because somewhere along the way, a few people discovered the truth that real power isn't about controlling the world, it's about mastering your reaction to it. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. It's the difference between living at the mercy of chaos and becoming immune to it. So the question isn't, how do I change the world? The real question is, how do I become untouchable even when everything around me falls apart? Most people don't live, they react. From the moment they wake up, they're tossed around by the world like leaves in the wind. Their phone buzzes with a rude message, their chest tightens. Someone ignores them, they feel invisible. They overhear a judgmental tone, suddenly they're consumed by self-doubt. Life becomes nothing more than a sequence of triggers and reactions. And yet, they don't see it. They believe it's normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Emotional reactivity is not normal. It's a form of unconscious servitude. You are not living as a free being. You are living like a puppet with every string pulled by someone or something outside of you. Carl Jung called this condition possession by the unconscious. It's when you think you're in control, but really you're being ruled by hidden stories, suppressed emotions, and unresolved fears. The world doesn't make you angry. The world doesn't make you insecure. It only activates what's already inside you. Think of it this way, if someone calls you worthless and you erupt in rage, the rage isn't about them. It's about the part of you that believes it might be true. If a stranger dismisses you and you feel deeply hurt, the pain isn't caused by their actions, but by your own lingering need for validation. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to a version of yourself that still needs to be healed. This is why two people can face the exact same situation and walk away with completely different responses. One laughs it off, the other breaks down. One sees challenge, the other sees personal attack. It's never the situation, it's the lens. It's the identity you've attached yourself to. And if that identity is fragile, if it depends on being respected, admired, liked, or understood, then your entire existence becomes a battlefield. Everything will feel personal. Everything will hurt. Everything will threaten your sense of self. So ask yourself, what are you really reacting to? The world or the parts of yourself you haven't yet confronted? Most people never stop to ask this question. They spend their lives trying to fix the outside change, people control outcomes, eliminate triggers, never realizing that the real battlefield isn't out there. It's in here, in your mind, in your perception, in the narratives you haven't rewritten. To be ruled by emotion is to live in chains. But the moment you begin to observe your reactions, to step back and ask, why does this bother me? You've already started breaking free. Observation creates space, and in that space you find power. Power to pause, power to choose, power to not react. That power is not apathy. It's not coldness. It's not emotional numbness. It is mastery. Imagine no longer being pulled in 100 directions by every comment, every glance, every disappointment. Imagine having the strength to remain centered while others lose themselves in chaos. That is not fantasy. That is the beginning of inner freedom. But freedom demands responsibility. You must take ownership, not of what others do, but of how you meet it. Because as long as you believe the world is doing things to you, you will remain a prisoner. But the moment you realize that your triggers are your teachers and your emotions are messengers, everything changes. This is the first step, not to control the world, but to stop letting it control you. There is a moment quiet, disorienting, and almost cruel when you realize the world isn't attacking you. It's mirroring you. Everything that frustrates you, hurts you, offends you. It's not proof that life is unfair. It's a reflection of what's unresolved within you. Carl Jung said it best, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Let that sink in. The moment someone insults you, ignores you, disrespects you, and you feel that sting, you're not just reacting to them. You're responding to an unhealed part of yourself, a fear, a belief, a wound. Something inside you has been touched, not created by their behavior. Think of it like a bruise. If someone brushes against your skin and you scream in pain, it's not because their touch was violent, it's because there was already pain beneath the surface. A bruise you didn't even know was there. Life is like that. It brushes against us, sometimes softly, sometimes harshly, and our reactions reveal where we're still broken. Most people never realize this. They go through life blaming others. He made me feel small. She disrespected me. They made me doubt myself. But the truth is, no one can make you feel anything unless a part of you is already vulnerable to it. The world simply hands you a mirror. And when you look into it, what you see is not them, it's you. This is not about blame, it's about awakening. Because once you understand this, you stop wasting energy trying to change people. You stop needing the world to be softer so you can be stronger. You realize painfully, powerfully that the only real battlefield is within. Let's be honest, that realization is hard. It demands humility. It demands that you stop pointing fingers and start asking questions like, why did that hurt me so much? What story am I carrying that made this comment feel true? What part of myself am I still rejecting? These questions aren't comfortable, but they're necessary, because if you avoid them, you'll spend your life in emotional reaction mode, forever triggered, forever wounded, forever blaming. The people who seem calm, grounded, and unshaken, it's not that the world is kinder to them, it's that they've faced their own inner chaos. They've walked through their emotional ruins, looked their insecurities in the eye, and made peace with the pain. So when life pushes, they don't collapse. When someone throws a verbal dart, it hits an armor built not of ego, but of awareness. And that awareness changes everything. Instead of seeing insults, you see projections. Instead of feeling small, you remember your worth isn't up for negotiation. Instead of fighting the mirror, you start using it to heal, to grow, to become. The world becomes your teacher. Every annoyance a lesson, every trigger a guidepost, every wound a doorway back to yourself. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it's real. And it's the only path to becoming someone who is no longer tossed by opinions nor wounded by rejection. Someone who sees life for what it is, a mirror, not a verdict. So the next time something hits you, emotionally pause. Not to suppress, not to blame, but to inquire. Ask, what is this showing me about me? Because when you start seeing the world this way, as a reflection, not an enemy, you stop being at war with it. And slowly, you begin to come home to yourself. There's a silent agreement most people carry through life, though they never speak it aloud. If I can control things, I will finally feel safe. We spend our days trying to bend the world to our will, making plans, controlling impressions, managing people's perceptions, seeking order in chaos. But underneath it all is a fragile truth. We rarely face control as an illusion. And the more tightly we grip it, the more it slips through our fingers. This is the source of most human suffering. Not failure, not rejection, not uncertainty, but the expectation that things should have gone another way. You wanted them to respect you and they didn't. You needed life to go according to plan and it unraveled. You demanded fairness and life responded with indifference. Suddenly your emotions spiral. Anger, disappointment, grief, shame. But if you look closer, those feelings weren't caused by the event itself. They were born from the shattering of the illusion that you were ever in control. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He wrote that the ego wants to believe it is the master, that it has power over life. But in reality, the ego is terrified. It builds false structures, identities, narratives, plans to protect itself from chaos. And when chaos inevitably comes, we feel betrayed. But by whom life never promised you control, you did. Most people don't suffer because of what happens. They suffer because they believe it shouldn't have happened. This creates tension. Resistance, a deep, constant war with reality. And the more we resist, the more we suffer. Ironically, the desire for control creates the very powerlessness we fear. The more you need things to go your way, the more vulnerable you become to everything that doesn't. Think about it. The moment you need someone to like you, you give them emotional control over you. The moment you need things to be predictable, uncertainty becomes unbearable. The moment you need life to be fair, every injustice becomes personal. That's not freedom. That's bondage. Freedom doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from letting go of your need to do so. This isn't the same as giving up. It's not passivity, it's clarity. It's realizing that your peace cannot be tied to anything you don't own, and you don't own people, outcomes, or the future. What you do own is your perception, your presence, your response. When you let go of control, something unexpected happens. Your suffering softens, your grip relaxes, and in that space you discover a power that isn't loud or forceful. It's still unshakable and rooted in reality. You begin to trust the flow, not because you know where it's going, but because you're no longer afraid of not knowing. You stop needing to force things to happen and start allowing them to unfold. And oddly enough, when you stop resisting life, it often aligns with you more gracefully than it ever did when you tried to force it. Letting go is not weakness, it's the highest form of strength. It's standing in the center of the storm with open hands saying, I am not afraid of what I cannot control. Because now you understand something most people never will. The more you let go, the less the world can hurt you, and that paradoxically is how you begin to regain true power. There's a sobering truth that life eventually forces us to confront, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes through failure, and sometimes through silence. You are not in control of what happens. You are only in control of how you see it. It sounds simple, maybe even obvious. But when that truth finally pierces you, not as an idea but as a reality, something inside you begins to shift. The world stops feeling so hostile. The chaos loses its teeth. Because you realize the most powerful force in your life was never out there. It was you, your lens, your interpretation, your perception. Carl Jung once said, "It all depends on how we look at things and not how they are in themselves." The world is neutral. It's not cruel. It's not kind. It just is. But your mind, shaped by your fears, your wounds, your hopes, paints it with meaning. It turns events into verdicts. A breakup becomes proof you're unlovable. A failure becomes evidence that you're doomed. A delay becomes a punishment from the universe. But none of those meanings exist in the world itself. They exist in you. And if that's true, if perception is the filter through which reality flows, then nothing matters more than becoming aware of that filter. Take two people. They both lose their job. One spirals into despair. I'm worthless. Life is against me. The other sees it as a signal. Maybe this is my chance to change direction. The event is identical. The suffering entirely dependent on perception. This is not toxic positivity. It's not about sugarcoating life or pretending things are always good. No, it's about taking ownership of your mental frame. It's about recognizing that while you can't always control the story, you can always choose the narrative. But this requires awareness. Brutal, honest awareness. You have to begin asking yourself questions you were trained to avoid. What story am I telling myself about this situation? Is this pain rooted in the moment or in my interpretation of it? What part of me is assigning this meaning? These questions are keys, because the moment you see the story, you're no longer a prisoner of it. You can revise it, reframe it, transcend it. And here's the most powerful part. Once you shift perception, the world changes, not because it actually changes, but because the way it lands inside you changes. Someone insults you, you realize it says more about them than about you. A plan falls apart. You recognize it as redirection, not rejection. You're alone. You begin to feel peace, not abandonment. This is the essence of inner mastery. It's not in controlling people. It's not in predicting outcomes. It's in realizing that you get to decide what anything means. And when you do, when you take back ownership of your perception, the world loses its grip on your peace. You become rooted, not because life is easy, but because you no longer collapse every time it's hard. So if you want to change your life, stop trying to change the uncontrollable. Start with the only thing that has ever been truly yours, your mind, your meaning, your view. That's not just mindset, that's freedom. There's a hidden truth about power that most people never see, not because it's complex, but because it's too uncomfortable to accept. Whatever you need has power over you, and the more you need it, the more control it has. We like to believe we're in charge of our lives, that our choices are ours, that we love freely, trust wisely, and pursue goals on our own terms. But underneath it all, for most people, there's a quiet desperation, a hunger for something outside themselves to complete them. Approval, love, respect, certainty, success, security. And when you need those things, not want them, but need them, you become easy to manipulate, easy to break. It happens subtly. You meet someone whose affection lights you up, and suddenly their opinion starts to define your worth. You get praised at work, and now you crave it. You chase it. You bend your integrity to keep it. You post something online, and if it doesn't get enough attention, you question yourself. That's not freedom. That's addiction dressed as identity. And it's dangerous because you begin to trade pieces of yourself in exchange for emotional survival. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He spoke of the danger of projection, the way we give away our inner authority by assigning too much value to outer symbols. When you need someone to love you, you hand them the key to your emotional stability. When you need success to feel valid, failure becomes unbearable. When you need certainty, you live in fear of the unknown. This is the trap. What you cling to owns you, and the world knows this. Manipulators know it. Toxic partners, power-hungry leaders, advertisers. They all understand one thing: if they can identify your emotional hunger, they can control you. They don't have to force you. They just have to offer what you think you can't live without. This is how good people get used, how intelligent people stay silent, how strong people collapse, not because they're weak, but because they never learn to need less. Here's the hard truth. Need is vulnerability in disguise. The more dependent you are on external circumstances for your internal peace, the more fragile that peace becomes. Because circumstances change, people leave, attention fades, and if your self-worth is tied to any of those, you're always one moment away from collapse. So what's the way out? It's not about becoming cold or detached. It's not about rejecting all desire. It's about transforming your relationship to those desires. Want connection, but don't need validation. Pursue excellence, but don't need recognition. Invite love, but don't depend on it for your identity. The strongest people are not those who feel nothing. They are the ones who need the least. Because when you need less, you become harder to manipulate, harder to shake, harder to break. You stop moving like a leaf in the wind and begin to move like a mountain. Let go of the need, and you take back your power. Let go of the craving, and you regain your clarity. Because what you truly are, your worth, your presence, your peace, was never meant to be outsourced in the first place. So ask yourself honestly, what are you still giving power to? Simply because you need it. And what might your life look like if you finally let it go? There's a common misconception in the modern world that if you don't react, you must not feel. That if someone insults you and you stay calm, you must be cold. That if life hits you hard and you don't collapse, you must be numb. But the truth is the opposite. Non-reaction is not emotional numbness. It is emotional mastery. It is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of understanding. Most people live at the mercy of every emotional wave that crashes through them. A text message ruins their day. A stranger's opinion derails their focus. An unexpected change breaks their spirit. They believe that reacting proves they care, that being triggered means they're alive. But reactivity is not a sign of passion. It's a sign of possession. You're not expressing yourself, you're being hijacked by your unconscious wounds. Carl Jung described this state well. He said that the shadow, the repressed parts of our psyche, doesn't disappear. It waits. And when life triggers us, it bursts through the surface, not as clarity, but as overreaction. You think you're angry at someone else, but really you're angry at the unresolved pain they touched. You think you're hurt by what was said, but truly you're hurt by what you believed about yourself long before they spoke. This is why true strength, the kind you admire in the calm, grounded, untouchable people, doesn't come from emotional suppression. It comes from emotional sovereignty, from knowing the difference between what's yours and what belongs to others. Imagine someone throws a stone at a mountain. The mountain doesn't flinch, not because it's dead inside, but because it's grounded, solid, unmoved. It doesn't mean the mountain didn't feel the impact. It means the mountain doesn't become the impact. That's what non-reaction looks like in a human being. You don't suppress your feelings, you witness them. You don't deny the pain, you observe it with curiosity. You don't lash out, you lean in and ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me about myself? This is not weakness. This is the rarest kind of power, because when you master your reactions, you become untouchable. Not because the world stopped hurting, but because you stopped giving the world access to your buttons. You stopped outsourcing your peace. You stopped handing out emotional remote controls to people who never earned the right to hold them. Some will misunderstand this. They'll say, but don't you care? Of course you care. You simply no longer confuse caring with crumbling. You've learned to hold space for pain without drowning in it. You've learned to breathe through the storm instead of becoming the storm. This is the wisdom of the Stoics. This is the essence of Zen. And it's echoed in Jung's work too. When you integrate the shadow, it no longer controls you. You don't explode. You expand. You hold your ground not to dominate others, but to no longer betray yourself. So the next time you're tempted to react, to shout, to snap, to spiral, pause. Feel the fire rising. Feel the old pattern urging you to lose control. And then don't. Not because you're weak, but because in that moment you remembered your power lies in presence, not performance. And presence is silent. In a world that thrives on provocation, the one who stays calm holds the real authority. Not because they're above emotion, but because they're no longer ruled by it. There's a shift that happens, quiet, internal, and irreversible, when you stop reacting and start observing. It is the moment your inner world becomes illuminated, and in that moment, awakening begins. Most people go through life on autopilot. They feel things, say things, do things, all without ever questioning why. Someone offends them, and they fire back. They fail at something, and they drown in shame. A person doesn't respond to their message, and they spiral into stories of abandonment or inadequacy. But what if, in that moment of being triggered, you didn't react? What if you paused just long enough to observe, just long enough to ask, what part of me is hurting right now? Is this really about them, or is this about me? This is not overthinking. This is the beginning of consciousness. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious runs our lives until we make it conscious. That means every unexamined reaction, every unspoken fear, every suppressed emotion is guiding your life from the shadows. And you call it fate. You think life is unfair, or people always disappoint you, or nothing ever works out. But often it's not life. It's you living out old patterns without realizing you're repeating them. The only way to break free is to develop the capacity to observe, to witness your emotions instead of becoming them, to step outside your own storm long enough to ask where it came from. Imagine your mind as a stage. The actors are your thoughts, feelings, and urges. Most people are stuck inside the play, screaming, reacting, defending. But awakening happens when you take a seat in the audience, when you watch the show instead of getting lost in the performance. And something powerful happens there. You begin to see. You see that the anger you feel isn't just about the person who disrespected you, it's about the years you felt unseen. You see that your jealousy isn't really about someone else's success, it's about the dreams you abandoned in yourself. You see that your need to control others is rooted in the fear of being out of control internally. This kind of self-observation is not easy. It requires radical honesty. It requires that you drop your stories and confront the raw truth underneath them. But this is where healing lives. This is where sovereignty begins. Because the more you observe yourself, the less you are controlled by yourself. And the less you are controlled by yourself, the less you are controlled by the world. Here's the paradox. The moment you become the observer of your thoughts and emotions, those thoughts and emotions lose their grip on you. They may still arise, but they no longer define you. You become a container wide enough to hold them all, without collapsing under their weight. This is not detachment. This is presence. The purest form of clarity, the kind that sees without judging, notices without reacting. And in that state, you reclaim something that was always yours, your awareness, your freedom, yourself. So the next time you're triggered, remember, this is your moment. Not to lash out, not to suppress, but to observe with compassion, with curiosity, and with courage. Because that single act, that quiet internal shift, is how real transformation begins. Not with noise, not with force, but with a simple sacred pause, where you finally see yourself. In a world obsessed with control, reaction, and validation, the greatest act of rebellion is inner stillness. The deepest form of power isn't about dominating others or orchestrating every outcome. It's about learning how to respond without losing yourself. You can't control the people who hurt you, the failures that find you, or the chaos that life delivers. But you can control how you meet it. This shift in perception is everything. When you stop reacting, you start reclaiming. When you stop needing, you start becoming. And when you stop assigning meaning to every insult, delay, or loss, you begin to live from a place of clarity rather than fear. Here's the truth. Emotional strength isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about understanding them deeply enough that they no longer control your life. It's learning to observe your pain instead of becoming it, to pause and choose your response even when your instincts beg you to explode. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't have to change the world to feel free. You only have to change how you see it. And in doing so, you become the kind of person who cannot be shaken, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. That is what it means to be untouchable.